You're on the world stage, the biggest tournament in the world. I was like, this can't be happening. There's no way.
Professional beach volleyball athletes Sam Schachter and Dan Dearing are multiple-time Canadian national champions.
And recently competed for Team Canada at the Paris 2024 Summer Games.
You guys qualified for Paris on the very last day. What happened there?
My low back just decides to say, hey, I'm done with you.
I see how much pain he's in. I see how hard we're trying to make it so we can compete.
How did you feel in that moment?
The pain I was in.
Walking off the court.
You can see him with the tears in his eyes.
It's so sad that it happened at the Olympics.
How do you balance the feeling grateful for the opportunity, but also the negative emotions that naturally arise from not achieving the ultimate goal that you went for?
It's sad. It's deeply saddening. There's a lot of healing that I think everyone's going to have to do.
It's not the way we want it to end.
Can we cut that part out?
Sure.
No problem.
Daniel Dearing is a piece of shit.
I hope we're
GFY,
recording
bro.
for that.
GFY.
I hope we're recording that part, because that part I want to keep in.
It's going to be like the trailer of the podcast.
Yeah. Gentlemen, welcome to Gents Talk. I'm so happy to have this conversation with you guys. You're fresh. You smell from Paris. You smell like you just came from Paris. Unless you were swimming in the river, then you probably wouldn't smell very good. But I'm really excited to have this conversation. Dan, you and I have known each other a long time. Sam, this is the first time you and I meet. But I've kind of watched you at a distance and heard about you and learned about you through Dan, who has nothing but bad things to say about you.
I'm sure.
All the time. But you were just in Paris competing for Team Canada. Congratulations on that. That's an incredible feat. Your first time, which is a lifelong journey to get there. Your second time, which is incredible to do a repeat. How are you feeling now that it's in the rear view? Let's start there.
Well, looking at that screen, seeing that photo, really brought, again, a fluctuation of so many emotions. Coming back from Paris and digesting everything that happened, I felt everything, from the highest of joys and gratitude to the lowest of pain and just the deepest of feelings when it comes to the choices that had to be made there. So, yeah, and we're going to talk all about that.
Oh, we will. Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, same, like all of the stuff, all of the emotions. It's been a couple weeks, so we've had some time to reflect and sort of look back on the journey and do a little bit of gratefulness practice, and then also, reflect on what we could have done better. And I think that brings up a lot for me, things that we would have liked to change, but also just appreciating having gotten there. So obviously, those are two very strongly opposing feelings, and it was, obviously excruciating, but also incredible that we got to get there in the first place. So, yeah, I don't know.
Life happens in the contradiction. So having those kinds of mixed emotions, how do you balance those? How do you balance the feeling grateful for the opportunity, but also the negative emotions that naturally arise from not achieving the ultimate goal that you went for?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just experience that, and I think everyone deals with and manages that in their own way. My inclination is to look at what I should change, and I think I have been that way my entire career. I think it's helped me in incredible ways, and it's also harmed me in ways that I won't be able to ever heal from it, and it's like a scar, right? So, yeah, I mean,
can you give me an example?
Things that you look back on, decisions that you should have made, whether that be continuing a partnership, or whether that be how you acted, how you performed, your preparation, up to incredible details like, you know, why didn't I eat enough food before this match, or why didn't I train hard enough during the off season and do my conditioning, all the way to bigger choices like deciding on which coach to hire, which partner to have to play with, whether you want to attend a tournament or not. So there's a lot of things, a lot of decisions that go into every single cycle, like Olympic cycle, or just journey like career. So it's a lot of decisions that you have to look back on every little fork in the road, and those are incredibly helpful in dictating how you potentially act in the future and sort of impact your future decisions, and whether I act in a different way that helps me in my next partnership, or repeating mistakes and being, you know, hard on yourself about that. So there's a lot of things that go into each cycle, each partnership, each journey, and so easy to look at those things that you would change versus the positives.
Let's start sort of at the beginning here. You were in the 2016 Olympics, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
You weren't with Dan at the time. So what triggered the change in the partnership? When did this even start? What was that process like? If, you know, based on just what I had heard from Dan, this was a pandemic baby, essentially. So maybe walk me through how this partnership even began and how it's evolved.
Looking at each other like, who's going to take? Well, after 2016, when I qualified for Rio, I played with another guy, Sam Pedlow, and he was one of the other top blockers. He went with us to the Continental Cup in 2016, where we qualified. And that's the guy who I basically earned the qualification for the Olympics against. You know, we had been talking after Josh retired from that. My partner for 2016 was Josh Binstock. He retired, and then I paired up with Sam Pedlow, and then I played that next cycle trying to qualify for 2020 in Tokyo with Pedlow. And then in about 2019, he was indicating that he had plans to retire after the Olympics as well. So I started looking around. And that's when Dan was actually not even playing at the time, which was the bizarre part of it. And we had played together and against each other our entire lives, from youth all the way up into, you know, where we started touring and playing as professionals. So he was always on the radar, but for, you know, whatever reason, he had decided to stop playing due to injury and, you know, maybe other factors as well. He can expand on that. But I was just threw him a question. Hey, would you be interested in coming back? I know how good I believed that we could be, and thinking that this could be the person that I could go on this journey with and qualify for Paris with. And the rest is history, as they say.
Dan, from your perspective, what was happening? You were inactive at the time, like you weren't playing professionally. You get this phone call from Sam going, hey, you interested? Well, firstly, what was happening with you at the point where that resulted in you not playing?
It all started in January 2016. I came down from a block, really messed up my back. And from that point on, the doctor said, take a year off. And then after that year off, I decided, okay, like, this is behind me. I'm going to focus on full-time work. Started working as a full-time coach. I started opportunities in the nightlife industry, working as managers and hosts for different clubs throughout Toronto. And even then, even though like I'm done playing professionally, I'm not doing conditioning, I'm not lifting, I'm not practicing every day, but I still love the sport. So I played for joy, and I got to play with his old partner Josh Binstock, who retired from international play, but he still loved the game, and him and I just paired up and started winning everything within Canada. So that was fun. And then when I got that phone call, and I'm not gonna say the question, always in the back of my head, I said I could probably give it another go when I'm healthy if only one person gave me that call, and it had to be the best player in the country. I was in a relationship at the time, thinking long-term goals, locked into a condo for rent, locked into jobs, thinking of future goals and where I want to take my whole life. And I had to really stop and consider all the sacrifices and choices I would have to make in order to do this properly and make sure that I was strong in order to do that. And then COVID hit, which gave an opportunity for kind of life to change on its own without me having to make those choices, which I think was a blessing. And then transitioning to show him that I'm ready, because he's like, hey, I want you to accumulate points. I want you to show me that you can manage your body. I want you to show me that you can dominate out there on the world tour, so that when I play with you, we're not starting at the bottom. We're starting to show that we can get in there and start grinding and get some wins right off the bat. So, and now here we are at 2024, and that was 5 years ago. And I look at these last 5 years, and I'm so proud of the choice that I made. I'm so happy that Sam gave me that phone call, and so much has happened in the last 5 years, in the last 2 years, in the last 8 months, that I wouldn't change a thing.
You guys qualified for Paris on the very last day.
The Olympic day, the annual day to like celebrate the Olympics is when we qualified.
You were playing a tournament in Mexico. You swept that tournament, which is incredible. And I noticed something in that tournament as I was watching it was this level of childlike joy between the both of you, both in your interactions with each other and just in your moments of happiness when you scored a point and you just celebrated to yourself. There was just this childlike joy that came out of both of you. I imagine over the course of several years, that's not something that's happening regularly. What were some of the challenges that you guys had to face along the way that made you doubt that the Olympics was even going to be a thing?
There were a few.
Please, Sam, don't be modest.
No, it was a really, really hard road. We had to make a lot of really big choices, big decisions, like path-altering decisions. We actually just had our team debrief a few days ago where we sort of reflected on some of those decisions where...
Those are always fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's anyways, those are for sure important. But I think the biggest thing that was sort of a barrier for us, especially at first, was the ability for both of us to sort of stay healthy. And, I was dealing with a knee injury early on, and Dan was dealing with back stuff, knee stuff, shoulder stuff, sort of chronically more. And a big part of our ability to sort of work through those issues was our ability was finding ways to manage it and learning that level of professionalism that it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's a 24-hour job, and it goes on constantly, because the second you sort of let your foot off the gas, and you ask this to any Olympian, is they'll confirm everyone else is just catching up or going farther ahead. So it really comes down to who works the hardest, and work the hardest doesn't mean when you're on the court, you're, working hard. That's an absolute bare minimum. It's the things that you do away from the court that I think a lot of people don't understand how much goes into that. Not only from the physical side, but the mental side and the organization side. And especially in beach volleyball, we are incredibly independent athletes. We have to do all of our own travel. We have to do all of our own bookings, organize our own training, we're the center of a lot of people who are invested in our success. So our therapist, our strength and conditioning coach, our mental performance coach, our personal coach, the national team head coach, all of these people sort of rotate around us, and we have to coordinate and communicate with everyone, check a lot of boxes, do things that people are asking. It's grindy. And, Dan and myself figuring out how to keep ourselves healthy and on the court was a pivotal part of that, but that connects 4 critical people, and making sure everyone's on the same page. And the second someone slips off the same page, you get hurt because you're doing too much in workout and not enough on the sand, or vice versa, or the therapist doesn't really communicate well to the strength and conditioning coach what the injury is, so you're actually exacerbating the injury during a training or a workout session. And these things seem sort of easy to, coordinate conceptually, but when it comes to practice, you're in constant flux and you're working on different things every other day. And the load, even within our week, is tapering and loading, and you're doing conditioning, and everything's changing because you're moving closer to a tournament, so your workouts are changing. So it's a lot of managing. It's a lot of stuff to manage, and on top of that, we have to sort of ourselves be mentally ready to play, and that's a whole different ball game. And then sort of on that note is creating the right team around you. So making sure that you have the right coach in place, making sure that the strength and conditioning coach is working well with you. We've had debates and discussions about all of those things, including therapy, to make sure that we're feeling healthy and we're having the right therapist who's making us feel the right way. So
I gotta ask you a question on
go
that.
for it.
All of that sounds a lot for one person.
Mm-hmm.
When there's two of you, like any relationship, there's going to be a level of, hey, are we doing this? Do you want to do this? What's the other person's commitment level to this? Does it match mine? Am I matching theirs? How do you balance a partnership while working towards the epitome of sports, the Olympics? There's egos, there's pride, there's emotions, there's down days, there's great days, and you're essentially hoping, just like any other sports team, that it all just perfectly lines up at the exact right moment. How did you guys balance those?
It took everything in me and in us, truly, to do that. You just said there's great days, okay days, bad days. There's a quote that says days come in thirds. Like, it came in many days, and definitely maybe in eighths. There was great days where we had solid training, great communication, great energy, and there was very, very bad days, like you said, about egos and clashing and not communicating well and not taking the moment to say something and holding on to it, leading to resentment to the next practice, and then that builds up. That was constantly happening. Sam knows me so well. I know him so well. Getting a coach involved, getting that team, that village to be a part of all that type of communication and energy takes a lot. And on the bad days, you're not in a great state of mind because it's a bad day. It's a bad training day. And we clash, and egos would clash all the time, creating not the best environments, not the best communication. And trust me, it got very dark and it got very heavy, where we needed days and weeks to figure out how can we get back to the goal that we all had in mind, which was, let's make the Olympics together, and putting all that negativity and heaviness and resentment aside. And Sam took a lot of leadership in that on our team, was to know that our intentions were always good, to push each other beyond the limits that we think we're capable of and not take anything personally, even though at times that's all it felt like. You were getting attacked, unheard. The sacrifices you were making didn't feel like the team responded to that or didn't know about that, or you wanted to share that, but you felt like you couldn't because at times Sam felt like all his energy needed to be dedicated towards my mindset for weeks and months at times. So it's a lot of fluctuation, a lot of communication, and the highest of highs and the lowest of lows.
Were you comfortable holding that on your shoulders? Having the prior experience, walking into this, knowing what it took to get to Rio, and then planning for Paris, knowing what's involved and knowing that you had to take a bigger step here. Were you comfortable holding that kind of responsibility?
I'm comfortable doing the right thing. And I'm comfortable. Part of being an athlete is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So however you sort of interpret that, where that's sort of part of the job, And I knew that was like implicit in being a leader on this team, is sometimes doing things that are difficult. We do it every day. So, yeah, like sometimes you have to hold space for your partner when that's not a thing you're necessarily comfortable with, or the thing that you want to be doing right at that moment in time. I think like the key thing that I got, of what Dan just said is like, we all need to come from a place where we're trying to understand each other. And I think that's a universal truth in this world, transcends sport. And that rule of thirds was also something super key in keeping me sane, where I brought that to the team and I was like, rule of thirds, 1 out of every 3 days is going to be bad, 1 out of every 3 days is going to be great, and 1 out of every 3 days is going to be like sort of the average. And if you're hitting, 2 out of 3 days bad, you're pushing too hard. If you're hitting 2 out of 3 days good, training's too easy. Mm-hmm. So you need to be sort of dividing that up to be keeping your sanity as you're going through this. So it's not like all bad, and it's not too easy where it's all good. So it's, it's that Goldilocks zone of improvement in my eyes. So I think, we had to constantly be reflecting on that. And I think your coach is someone who really needs to be, have his finger on the pulse of the team and sort of understand where we're at each day. So he can sort of manipulate and adjust practice to get us into that, mindset where we are having a good day today. Just modify down, make it easy for us, baby, please. I beg of you. We don't need another grind. But yeah, or scale it up. And
so it sounds like it's very much like there's a mindset that has to be developed and nurtured throughout this process to keep you going. And you have to balance your mental toughness and wellness with your emotional toughness and wellness, with your physical toughness and wellness. And you're trying to balance all of these things while also trying not to fold under the pressures of expectations being set on you externally. And that's not even to speak to the massive internal expectations that I'm pretty sure you guys set on yourselves as well. I want to go to the physical element. You both talked about injuries. Igor, can you do me a kindness and so this is for context for anyone who's listening. This is a video from your game against, I think it was Chile, which was your 4th game, right? You lost the first 2, won the 3rd, and this one, if you won it, you advanced forward. So, Igor, can we hit play for a moment? What happened there?
Good Lord. I haven't watched that.
Everything happened there. Everything.
Talk me through it.
Well, throughout the entire journey, Sam knows, and I know about him, how we pushed each other to the limits all the time. He helped me do that. And it's a 24/7 job. And leading up to that point, I look back on that moment, and it's not the way we wanted to end. I rather have been able to fight and do our best and lose to a team that's better than us. That's how we imagined going there. Never this moment. No one wants to witness that moment. No one wants to feel that moment. For me, the one who made the call, and for him who had to support that call, it was the right decision to make. I couldn't move. I was feeling so much physical pain, so much emotional pain, and I'm trying to even allow this space of how Sam's feeling, trying to be empathetic when that's not even on my priority list. So it's a fluctuation of emotions, seeing that, because it just brings me back to that exact moment where it ended in a way that we didn't want it to end. And at times, that is just the moment that was captured by the world. But at times, 4 or 5 times throughout this journey, I felt exactly like that. Exactly like that, where I'm in tears and I can't communicate, or I can't really tell Sam and our coach how I'm feeling and how I feel like I've pushed myself beyond my body's limits. So it's so sad that it happened at the Olympics, but yeah, it's tough to watch.
So what exactly happened? What was the injury there?
I've been managing a bummed shoulder since December of 2023, and it caused a lot of hurdles and a lot of tough conversations and management from physio and our coach and our load, and the focus has been on the shoulder for such a long time that this was kind of out of nowhere. My low back was feeling great. It didn't seem to be a problem at all, but earlier that morning, just a funky outside lunge movement caused my back to go into full spasm, and started to apply a lot of pressure on my spine where I couldn't move without being upright and stiff and straight. Looking back, as Sam said, you look back at how you would want to change things, or how could you have done things to make this not happen. And I think maybe the focus for me mentally and physically and the team was so much put onto my right shoulder that my shoulder just prioritized everything. I was constantly popping meds and doing exercises and getting treatment to try to maintain my shoulder, so when we're on the court for 45 minutes, I can perform without it being a distraction. And then boom, my low back just decides to say, hey, I'm here too, and I'm done with you. So that's what happened.
There's a lot of emotion in that video.
There will always be in that video.
Could only imagine.
You can see it. You can see it on my face. You can see what Sam's going through, and he probably looks at himself and feels his own types of way of his emotions, and looks at me, and I hope that he can see that I pushed myself beyond the limit, because I know I did. And it'll always be tough to see, but it was the right decision to make. I could not have won that game. I could not have performed. And just at the beginning of coming in here, seeing that clip, it's a fluctuation of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, because you're on the world stage at the biggest tournament in the world that Sam and I were able to get there and achieve. But yet, I'm not going to say it's the lowest of lows, because it's not. It's just a lot of everything.
Have you reconciled it?
Yeah, I've been reflecting on it, and again, just to repeat, looking back at what could I have done? Should I have done more work on my low back? And just like, okay, my low back's tight, but it's nothing compared to my shoulder. So it'll go away. I'll do my activation. I'll do my core, and I'll feel fine. So, yeah, it'll take more time for sure, but it doesn't take away. That was a moment in a tough choice to make on a world stage, but reconciling with that moment, I honestly, the reflection of the journey and the 99% of what got us there in the first place, and having similar moments like that throughout Sam and I's career and partnership, that's just one of them. Unfortunately, but those moments for me happened a lot, and it just sucked. It sucked to have happened there.
Sam, I gotta ask, When you're competing at a high level and you don't play to your fullest, you don't play well for whatever reason, you can kind of take mental notes and go, okay, this is why I didn't play well, to an earlier point that you made. When you're playing in a pair and an unfortunate circumstance arises with your teammate that essentially means that even though you might have been competing at the level that you wanted to, you just simply can't continue anymore. And I'm just curious, how did you feel in that moment?
Yeah, like a mix, of course. I think I was in shock still. Like, it was like a, like you're watching yourself move around and do this, like you're not even in your own body type of thing, because it was what we wanted. We were in a place where we wanted to be, doing what we loved and not being able to compete. I mean, it's the weirdest mix of emotions I think I've ever had, where I'm so empathetic because I'm seeing everything unfold. I'm there for every moment of it, pretty much, other than I think when you were in the polyclinic getting treatment. I was with you every other moment. All the way to, deciding to pull out. And then, so I'm so empathetic for what he's going through, because I see how much pain he's in. I see how hard we're trying to make it so we can compete and step on the court. And then there's the other part of me, the more selfish part of me, where it's like watching your partner's ankle just get rolled. Freak accident at the net. Happens all the time, part of sport, but you feel robbed of the chance to compete. And I think that's the emotion that I've had to battle with the most, because we work so hard to get there, and then we are both robbed of that. The only difference is I have zero control, and Dan has limited control in a sense that, like, these things happen. It's part of sport, and it's not that he's not trying. Of course he's trying. We all recognize that. And I'm sure he feels robbed. Why is my body failing me? It's robbing me of the chance to do this, which is like the, ultimate sporting event for our sport. So yeah, like those two weirdly contrasting emotions, where it's like frustration and anger and disappointment and empathy and caring and love, because we're brothers. We've been through all of this together. So I wouldn't want to see my opponent, that happened to my opponent. They weren't happy that they had to, they're happy they're passing to the next round, but nobody wants to win in that fashion. It's against the whole spirit of what the Olympics is, which is competition and unity and countries coming together and celebrating sport. There is no celebration of sport there. That's sadness. I think everyone in the crowd, everyone watching on TV was experiencing the same thing. They want to see us compete. They want to see us have joy on the court the way, you were expressing that we had joy in Mexico. It was an elimination round. All of those all those matches in Mexico where you were seeing that joy was elimination rounds, do or die moments. We had that against Austria. There was a ton of joy because it was a do or die moment. Hey, let's just go out there and let it rip. And we couldn't let it rip. And I think that's, it's sad. It's deeply saddening. There's a lot of healing that I think everyone's going to have to do, including our coach, who was, out there grinding with us the entire time. And, I don't know. I do know it was horrible. It was horrible for everybody, but, just a weird mix to try and navigate, I guess.
And when you hear Sam talk about the concept of feeling robbed by the moment, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
I agree. It was robbed from him. It was robbed from our coach. It was robbed from me. It was robbed from all those fans that decided to pay money and come watch our game, to all our community and country that tuned in to watch. I didn't want that to happen. I didn't. And when it happened in the morning, I was so scared. I was so scared. I was like, this can't be happening right now. It can't be. There's no way. And then just, yeah, the pain I was in, I was fighting it, trying to like not let it be real and do everything that I was being told to do from all the professional staff in our support system. Every second was a lot, and there was a lot of seconds leading from in the morning to that match. And if it was just me, I probably would have not have showed up to that court and not played and been in that moment for the whole world to see, because I knew I there's no way that I could perform, let alone I had a hard time just walking onto the court. And Sam has done so much for me as this partnership. Our coach and coaches have done so much for us that I literally had to do it for them first. And it was more than about me. And I went on the court and I wanted it to just disappear. I'm like, oh, I'm going to feel the energy of the court. I'm going to feel being on the best venue at the Olympics. I'm going to take it all in, and it didn't happen. And even when Sam put up his best serve of the year, he thunderbolted a jump serve. I was like, for 1 second, I'm like, oh, he can do it. He can do it for us. I can just be a pylon. But so I did have that 1 second of like, whoa, like we're going to take this to the next level. But I couldn't. There were so many things going in my mind. It wasn't about volleyball in that moment. It was about Sam. It was about our coach, Sir John, and it was about the country. And I don't even like saying those words. I couldn't do it. I could have kept playing. We wouldn't have won though. And
probably shouldn't have either.
And I would have put myself into a position that I could have hurt myself for the rest of my life. And I'm still struggling today, just trying to recover. But just seeing that moment and that clip again brings just as much emotional pain as the physical pain that I was going through. So.
And for more context, the injury was so severe that you basically were bedridden for what, 2-3 days afterwards?
36 hours after that happened, it was a hard time. It was a very hard time.
If I was a fly on the wall, what would I have seen?
You would have been traumatized. It was...
There was no ego, couldn't exist. Pride couldn't exist. The only thing that existed was pain, emotional pain and physical pain. And I'm like, I didn't even want my fiance to be in the room there with me, because I knew she would have started to cry and trying to help. So having Sam there was probably the best person to be there, because at least he's seen it and experienced it before. Not to that extent, of course, but I was in so much pain. I FaceTimed Shanice, my fiance, on the computer, and I just wanted her to be in there and support with me as I fell asleep, and it worked. If you were a fly on the wall at 3 a.m. in the morning, you would have seen me try to go to the bathroom and fall face down on the floor and be stuck there for an hour. After the hour went by, I was able to drag myself closer to my bed, and then I'm gonna turn this powerful moment into more of a humorous moment. I'm not the greatest sleeper. I moan, I snore, so Sam has to put in his headphones and a little sleep mask in order for him to not hear me. And then in that moment when I was on the floor, I felt helpless, completely helpless. And I was calling out for Sam. I was calling his name because I needed help. And in that moment, I was like, okay, Sam's not here. He's going through his own amount of pain that he's experiencing, and he's probably with his fiance. who's been there with us for all of this journey. And I'm like, okay, he's there, he's getting filled up, he's dealing it with his way. I'm here alone, and this is going to be a very hard and struggling moment, and probably the most struggling moment in my life. And in that moment, I found another layer of strength that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. And I just sat there until 8:30 in the morning, until the doctors and Sam came and people woke up and they were able to treat me and to get me out of spasm and to put me on a lot of meds. And it was excruciating. It was painful. And over the course of a week after that, where there was good days and bad days, and now there's more good days than bad days, but I'm still trying to recover and get my back into a spot where at least my daily motions of life can be not painful, let alone I'm not going to step onto a court for a few months for sure, to make sure that this is properly dealt with. But I think that fly would have stayed on that wall and not moved the entire time. And I kind of wish you could have been a fly on the wall, because at least I know my brother Samir would have been there. But I could talk about that moment in this much depth for the rest of my life, because I know exactly what happened there, and I know exactly how I felt. And when I look back and go through 5-10 years from now, and you ask me that same question, I will answer it the exact same, and probably with this much emotion, knowing that I can just go back to that exact same moment and realize, even though it was the worst, sporting moment for me, because we weren't able to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, and then having those moments of being stuck on the floor and almost pissing myself, those moments will stick with me for a lifetime. And those are the type of moments where hopefully I'll be able to look at that video clip of us having to forfeit our match and realize I did give it my all, and I went through so much in order to get there. And I hope Sam knows for the rest of his life and his career that he feels that exact same way, because I was in a lot of pain. But wow.
The Olympics ain't always chalked up to be what people want it to be. There's a lot of stuff going on behind.
Well, I was going to say, just listening to the both of you speak, we see this, right? We see the flashy opening ceremony, we see the games, we see the highlight reels, we see the podiums. And I was reflecting on this before this conversation. We don't see anything that's happened in the last 5 years leading up to this moment. Without having any of this context, if I were just to turn on the TV and watch this match and then see that you got injured, I would think, oh, maybe he just hurt himself in the play. How unfortunate. Flip the channel. Let's go watch another Canadian do something. I'm wondering if there's one or two things that you can think of that if you can share with people, hey, this is what really goes on behind the scenes that you don't see in the life of an Olympian to compete to this level, what would those things be? Because I know you guys are not necessarily making a lot of money being an Olympian, right? Like, we've had this conversation in the past where, for the most part, you're relying on sponsors and self-funding, you're funding your travel and all of those things. So you're really doing this because you're passionate and you love it. And to some degree, there's a level of craziness in there, but you need a little bit of crazy in your life. What are people not seeing about the life of an Olympian?
I think the main thing for me that people don't fully grasp is playing is the easiest part of our day, of our week, of our month. Like, competition is easy. The reason why it's easy is because when we're training, you train harder to make the match easier. And when you use that principle, there is really no limit on how hard you should be training, because the better you are in training and the better that makes you, the higher your game average performance rises. So this is like the most fun, and you see how stressful it can be at times and how frustrating and all the emotions that it can bring up at times. So, people say, oh, when you watch athletes perform, it's really like the proverbial like tip of the iceberg of all the work that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like the easiest work that we're doing. Like our conditioning is done to expand our capacity in games. Our training is done to expand our capacity in games. Everything, including our emotional stress, is like we try and target our weakest elements constantly because we know our opponents are going to. So we're also working on the stuff that we're the worst at. So it's not fun. It's not a ton of fun. It's fun competing and it's fun winning. But you have to be obsessed with the challenge. Mm. And I think the athletes who are like almost fundamentally miserable because they're putting themselves in the state of like battling their misery constantly to expand their capacity. We talk about extending our wick. So allowing that candle to burn for longer. And that's what we do when we do conditioning is we're extending our wick. It was like sort of our team motto for years. And then we're not doing it for a ton of money and we're at the top of our field in the world. So we're an Olympian, you could imagine if I were a salesperson in the top 0.01% of the world population, I'd be like a billionaire. I'd be fucking so rich. So fucking rich. I wouldn't have to ever worry about money again. But we're out here competing, doing our passion for some. And it doesn't always pay off. And there's roadblocks everywhere. And you're not, you try to enjoy the journey. And we talk about it a lot as like, enjoying the journey part of it, not just the Olympics, because this is the exact stuff that could happen to any team, or losing or not breaking pool, or, losing your last match of the tournament. Really only one, maybe two teams go home happy with the gold medal.
Yeah.
Right. So, you have to learn how to enjoy that grindiness of the process. It's really like, that's the mentality that produces champions or produces just like happy Olympians, which you don't tend to see a ton of, because they won't talk about what I'm talking about, which is the grindy part of it. Everyone just sees the prestige of the Olympian and the fun. Oh my gosh, everyone knows you now. Look at this. One of my mentors, who's Marquise, he used to compete for Canada internationally. He's a 3-time Olympian and a bronze medalist. And he told me the story when I was 16. He said, we went to the Olympics, we won the bronze medal, and we were like, that's it? Did all this work and we feel like this? Like, that's weird. Like, it's not everything
right.
that you hope it's to. And it sort of pivoted my mindset to be like, maybe I should try and enjoy myself while doing it more, which is sometimes hard to do. But,
of course,
when you ask what, pull the curtain back on the Olympian a little bit, and that's not all doom and gloom. Like, there's a lot of fun parts about it.
Of course, yeah.
But that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand about professional sport. They think, oh, you're going to have this luxury lifestyle. Well, we're usually getting the cheapest Airbnb we can find because we're not making that much money. It's a little grindy. But, if you're with the right person, and Dan and I had a ton of fun on this journey, it makes it all sort of worth it in the end. Like you gain so much experience, you gain all these tools, these wonderful skills that you don't know if it's going to translate into real life or not. We're keeping a fucking balloon off the ground here. There's a lot of things that we're learning on the way, and I think that's like the wonderful part of it. So there's like the tough part, the grindy part that people don't know about, and then sort of the other side of that. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. Did you?
I did too. The challenge was daily. Sometimes it was easier, but it was still a challenge. And sometimes it was the hardest challenges I've ever had to face in life. And I wouldn't change that. And we showed up practice after practice after practice. And that's kind of what you have to do. You just show up. You show up on a bad day, on a good day. You show up. And then learning from him, especially the first year, I'm a sponge and he's like a very disciplined, hard work ethic, like strong mental liquid that I just sponged up, where you just show up every single day, no matter the challenge, and put in the work. And it becomes routine. It just doesn't become a choice or a thought anymore. You just do it. It just happens. It's kind of like I think I shared it with you. You come home after a long day or even partying and you're drunk. You still brush your teeth. It's just a routine. You brush your teeth before you go to bed. So there's bad days, injury days, tired days, crying days, and then you run conditioning. I can't sleep. I'm in separate beds with my fiance. My shoulder is waking me up every single day, multiple times at night, and I show up for practice at 8 a.m. I might not be able to hit. I might not be able to do certain things, but I can pass. I can set. I have to show up even if I don't want to, because my commitment is to Sam, to this team. And having to share all of those thoughts and processes and pain in a way to hopefully get people to understand is a challenge on its own. And I've failed multiple times speaking to Sam and speaking to our coach. And with his knee injury and seeing him freak out just by doing a little pivot and his knee just blows up and he has to like get off the court or else he feels threatened, you show up. And seeing those moments and sharing those moments, we know that we gave it our all in the moments. And then you look 2 weeks later, a month later, and you realize through that whole process, guess what? Without even knowing it, you've extended your wick. You just don't know it. You've extended it.
It's a beautiful analogy. I like this concept of extending your wick. What's next?
I don't know yet. There's lots of things that are going to happen in my change, in my choices that I make in life. But what I do know is that all of these hard moments and all of these beautiful moments will help me for the rest of my life. And whatever challenge comes next, I will handle it beautifully, even though it's going to be so painful, as life is so uncertain and things can happen so quickly, that because of this journey, I've prepared myself to hopefully deal with life's challenges in a beautiful, encouraging, mentoring, vulnerable way for the rest of my life, no matter what happens next.
Amazing. What about you, Sam? What's next?
Good question. Good question. Still reeling from this ordeal over here. So, yeah, I mean, I still have a passion to play and compete.
You gonna try again?
I don't know. Undecided.
Yeah.
I think what I'll do is I'll, compete, whether that be full-time or partially or less than partially, over the next year and see if I still am feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of work that goes into a quad. So I've learned that it's not a good thing to decide what you're going to do for the next 4 years immediately after you experience one of the biggest moments of your life. You need to let that settle a bit.
Yeah.
You need to sort of feel that out, because it was very easy for me the last few times where I would just, I'm playing another 4 years, no question. Let's go. Pick a partner, let's go. And maybe rush some of those decisions versus sitting on it and thinking about, think about what I want, think about what I've learned about this. And, playing with Dan, playing with any new partner, you build a whole new group of skill set, like these soft skills, right? Dealing with Dan was very different than dealing with Pedlo, which was very different than dealing with Binstock, which was very, very different than dealing with my very first partner. So, like those, each time you learn something pivotal that you'll certainly apply to your next partnership, and you'll continue to grow and you'll continue to use what you've learned to hopefully make the right decisions and do the best with what you have at the time. Yeah. And I think that's all we can ask from ourselves.
Final question for each of you here. When you look at that screen there, if you can go back and say one thing to that version of you, one piece of advice, something you may have needed to hear in that moment that you know now. Mind you, I know it hasn't been that long since, but with enough reflecting, I'm curious what you would say to yourselves.
Get the ace. Serve the ball better so we can go for one more point. No, I mean, this is the thing, right? Is you can go back and you can look on that. I don't know if there's anything that you can say to that person, that version of myself, that would make a really huge impact. Force Dan to do more core in the morning. I don't know, right? There's nothing you can really do. What happened and was destined to happen. We sort of had this thing where I was getting really stressed out in Mexico for our qualification. And I was saying, Dan, more to calm myself down, I was saying, Dan, this is done. We've done the work. This is like studying for an exam. You've done all the work, you've studied, you've everything's completed. Now you just have to go and write it, right? Like you just put your information on paper. And this is how I used to calm myself down in university before exams. I was a terrible exam writer. I was like, it's sort of that idea morphed into, this is all pre-decided. It's done, right? Like there's nothing more that you can do to impact the results. So let's just play it out. Let's just go and play it out and have fun. And try and have fun and try and enjoy the experience, because me stressing about it isn't going to make me play better. Mm-hmm. And me worrying about whether we qualify or not, it's like at the end of the day, like we'll either qualify or we won't. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. And it's a little bit of disassociation from it. And it's sort of like maybe a protection mechanism.
Yeah.
But it allows your performance to come out. And for me to say to myself here, hold Dan's hand tighter, I did what I thought was right, and that's right. If I really look back on it, there are times in my life where I'm like, I don't know, maybe I would change what I did, but I think everyone's trying to operate off of do the right thing at that time with the information that you have, and I think I did, and I think Dan did too. So if there maybe some comforting word, it's okay. This too shall pass. Dan's gonna, his back's gonna get better, and we're not gonna, hopefully have any permanent damage here. And it's shit. It's a shit situation. What do you say to someone whose parents just died? It's a shit situation. Fuck condolences. I'm here for you. It's an impossible situation. But I'm proud of how we tried, and that's all we can say. In the end, to me, that's all I can say.
It's funny because thank you for sharing that. And my word would be thanks. One word, thanks. That was me, a few weeks ago, and seeing that clip, it looks like, knowing myself, I gave it my all. So thank you, Dan, for doing that. Mm-hmm. Seeing Sam and how he's grasping and intertwining his hands with mine and walking me through that moment. Thanks. Thank you, Sam. And like that sure is a conclusion of a choice and the conclusion of a situation and the conclusion of, our moment as a team. But thanks for the journey, right? Like, thanks for getting to that point, and thanks for all the support from everybody, and I really hope that, again, we're men that we reflect on our actions and how we can get better all the time, every day at practice. This is what happened yesterday. I need to make sure that it doesn't happen, or I'm better at it 1% the next day. And hopefully, because of that moment and the impact of that moment, I and Sam and we just get better from it. Whether it's becoming a world-class athlete and you go for another quad, hopefully that moment makes you better. And hopefully that moment for me will make me better. So thanks.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing. This was a powerful journey that didn't just start 5 years ago. It started much, much earlier than that for both of you, and your paths happened to connect on this particular part of this journey. And what comes next is to be seen and to be determined, but I have faith that you guys are going to be up to great things in whatever way that comes. I'm confident that it will happen, because honestly, just witnessing that, but hearing how you have reflected on it, talked about it. I've thought about how I would react in that moment, and I don't know if I could have handled it as well as you guys seem to have. And so I'm learning from you guys as you're talking, and I thank you for sharing that with me and helping me understand how you thought about a moment like that and how you dissected it and said, this is how we're going to move forward. And I know it's still a process, but thank you. That's all I could really say. Thank you for your time. You guys are amazing. You're Olympians. You should be proud of all of that, no matter what happened that day. And I'm rooting for you both every step of the way. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Samir.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.